Hello and welcome to Incorruptible Mass. Our mission here is to help you transform state politics. We know that together we can make Massachusetts policy reflect the needs of the vast majority of the residents of our beautiful state. And today we are myth busting. We're going to go through a dozen things that you might believe, but that we can tell you are not true. We may not go into all the details. We're going to try and keep it nice and quick. Before we do, I am going to let my two super incredible co-hosts introduce themselves. Jordan Berg Powers.
My name's Jordan Berg Powers. I use he, him, and I have too many years experience in the Massachusetts politics.
Jonathan.
Kind of Jonathan Cohn, he, him, his, joining from Boston, have been active for what's scarily approaching 10 years.
Anna Callahan, she, her, coming at you from Medford, and I have just the right amount of years. No, I'm looking forward to way more years in Massachusetts politics. We always have a good time here, and we are excited to bust some myths. We hear from a lot of people that they think one thing, and it turns out that ain't the truth. So here we are. We're going to be fast and furious, coming up with things that we hear a lot, that we are going to tell you the real truth about, the real story. And Jordan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, our state is not run well. It's, people have this idea we're a Democratic state, and certainly we send some really incredible people to Congress. We send some really incredible people to the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, but our state is not run by the best and brightest minds in the state. And in fact, it's just run by basically 3 or 4 people. Just a few people have a lot of control. And they are people who can accumulate power. They aren't necessarily the wonkiest of people or people who care deeply about making sort of change that to make your life better. So we have this myth because there's a lot of good things going on, but we are really resting on the laurels of other good decisions that have been done, in the fact that the population of Massachusetts is dynamic and incredible and pushing forward in lots of incredible ways. But our state is being run into the ground for no good reason.
And if you want some more details, you can basically go back to the 3rd episode of this season. If you think our state is doing fine, think again. And you can hear a ton of details about how we're falling behind other states, including deep red states, how we are not passing a lot of the policies that you think we should have here. So please go back and listen to that one. I am going to just quick bring up this idea that I hear so often that the people are like, well, if I'm going to work on a state, I'm not going to work in Massachusetts. I hear this from people in Massachusetts. I hear this from relatives I have who are in other states, who are in Missouri, who are in, Kansas, who are in anywhere else. They're all like, well, I get it while you're working on state politics, but you don't need help in Massachusetts. And I'm here to tell people that working in a blue state, this is how the Republicans win. They work in deep red states and they get their policies to actually pass. And that's how they motivate their people. And that's how they get national policy passed. It's working for them. If we want the same kind of success, we need to work in deep blue states, just like Massachusetts, get our policies passed. And that's how we're going to do national stuff.
No, before I hop on to another point, I just want to kind of emphasize on that we will often hear about deep red states passing terrible policy, and we rightfully are like, kind of pay attention to that. But nobody is ever saying, like, why are the conservative activists focusing on Tennessee? Like,
right. Nobody questions that.
Like, of course that they do. Where they have power, they push to use it. And so that if we have, where you do have typically power outside of our tendency elected Republican governors here in Massachusetts, we have that supermajority, we should use it. And that needs work to make them do so, especially because, to say to another point, so many legislators will tell you that they support things and tell you will sign on to bills, sign on to amendments, and then they have no actual intention of ever voting for the thing. I'm always fascinated, and amendments is something that I'll touch on a little bit later, when people sign on to amendments and then proceed to not vote for the thing that they just signed on to.
Before you get to that one, just one second. I'm going to jump in because we did talk about this. It was episode 40 of season 4. We talked about strategy and power, how we can pass policy nationally, and why the right is beating us. So this is Mythbuster number 2. Go to episode about working in red or purple states versus blue states. Go to episode 40.
Awesome. And I think it's important for people to, when it comes to like following up with your legislators here in Massachusetts, which you need to do to kind of push anything, is one, sometimes that they're not going to tell you the exact truth about how that they're going to vote, because you can often get cagey responses from them, or they're just trying to like kind of a somewhat evasive answer about what they'll actually do. And after the fact, if they take votes that are contrary to what you believe in, they'll often either not say anything at all, or give packaged responses coming from House or Senate leadership to massage the truth into being something that sounds palatable. And it's important that if we're going to get better policy, for people to actually know when somebody is not being 100% truthful in their response to you. They might not, like, this isn't necessarily lying, because there's a range of things between telling the truth and outright lying, but it's taking advantage of that area in between to kind of present alternate reasons for why they're doing what they're doing, as opposed to acknowledging that like the terrible system that they operate in. And if you are making concessions to that system, I may disagree with you on your strategy, but at least understand where you're coming from, rather than you trying to tell me that like grass is blue and the sky is green.
Yeah, and just to go off on that, I just want to say, myth number 4 is just that they keep their campaign promises, which I want to be careful about, because I know that people love to say that politicians lie. And I will say that most of them don't. They, in best intentions, they will sort of make all sorts of promises to you and then not follow through. But one of the things that drives me crazy is when people, one of the things that drives me bonkers is when politicians run for office and then don't have in any way a desire to actually do the thing that they say they're going to do. And too many representatives in Massachusetts fall into this category. For those of you who don't know, like, one of the reasons for my desire for a job change is that I got tired of people running for office making promises to my face that they have no intention of keeping. And so I think that that's the piece. It's one thing, look, as Jonathan said, like, sometimes legislative things don't go exactly as you plan, or you hope to pass them, but it's not quite the right thing, or it's not exactly right, or you're trying your best. I think all of us have a lot of patience for that. I'm not one of those people who's a nihilist about our democracy that thinks that just because it's messy, just because it can take time, or just because it's not exactly right, that therefore we shouldn't have it. No, those are all the intricacies of working with human beings. The part that is awful is, when you have people sort of go to your face and say, I support this thing, and then 2 years later say, I never told you I was going to support that thing. And that happens more in the Massachusetts State Legislature than any place I've ever worked. It just does not happen other places, where people sort of are willing to not just tell you what you want to hear, but tell you things that they have no intention of ever taking seriously in any sort of way, but are doing so to win elections. I think of Medicare for All as a perfect example for that. There are so many people who understand that it's popular, who understand that our healthcare system does not make sense and is terrible. And so they want to make a promise to fix it, but they have no intention of ever fixing it.
And before we go on, because I know we're going to go on to something super related, before we go on, this whole thing of people believing campaign promises, it boggles my mind, because in like high school, college times, I was like voted most gullible. And I am an incredibly trusting person, right? I am that person who just believes that everyone is like well-intentioned and well-meaning and all this stuff. But I don't believe campaign promises. That's obviously baloney, right? I don't believe that. And it boggles my mind when like presidential candidates, who obviously Medicare for All is a good one, because the last presidential primary, everybody was supposedly for Medicare for All, like all these people who aren't for Medicare, they're against it. They're all promising to be for Medicare for All. because that's what the public wanted. And it boggled my mind when people would say, well, there's no difference between this person and that person because they both want the same policies. Just look on their websites. And I'm like, how can you believe this? You've got to have the receipts, man. Anyway, I will let us go on to number 5.
I feel like this segs well into let's say like myth number 5 about how co-sponsoring is enough, or it means somebody.
Let's be clear. Myth number 5. My state rep co-sponsored the bill. Doesn't that mean they're going to vote for it?
Vote for it. That, because I feel that dovetails well when it comes to people. Kind of one, what's important to recognize about co-sponsorship is that it is the most basic possible thing and doesn't mean much beyond that. That it is a good thing to ask people to do, but doesn't mean that they will vote for it if it comes to the floor. Unfortunately, no. There are cases where the lead sponsor of a bill has proceeded to vote against the text of their bill when it comes to a vote. Or when people have co-sponsored, as I noted before, when people have co-sponsored amendments and then voted against the exact amendment, that it is something that may be indicative of the likelihood of somebody doing something, that they are more likely to do it if they co-sponsor than if they do not. But it does not mean that they're ultimately going to champion it. It also doesn't even mean that they fully support it, because I've had legislators as well comment that they sign on. Well, it's like, oh, well, a lot of my constituents asked me, so I signed on, but I don't actually support it. And it's like, then you're defeating the whole purpose of this even being a thing. It's not, your constituents aren't asking you to put your name on it just to have your name on it. They're asking you to put your name on it because they want you to actually support it and advocate for it.
They're not defeating the purpose of them getting reelected.
Right? And that it's something that can often be stressful for about how little so many people who co-sponsor bills even care about the bills that they co-sponsor. And it's as well beyond that, I think, is just because that not only does that not mean that they're going to necessarily vote for the thing that they co-sponsored if it comes to the floor, but it doesn't mean they're doing anything for it. And it's a reminder that you need to be bothering your legislators, because it's the most passive of things for them to do, to put their name on something. Sometimes they even lobby against the thing that they co-sponsor. That has happened on bills in the past.
Yep.
So your work is not finished, and your work may not have even started.
Totally. An education bill failed out of a committee where 2/3 of the committee members were co-sponsors.
Exactly.
The transfer fee bill got voted against by 9 of the co-sponsors. I mean, this happens all the time.
No, I feel like that's even just as a quick amendment to that. The fact that the person who's chairing a committee is a co-sponsor of the bill does not mean that the bill is getting out of the committee. The fact that a majority of the committee co-sponsors a bill does not mean the bill is getting out of a committee, because ultimately, as we have talked in past episodes, so the committees are largely just functionaries of those above them, that whether or not House and Senate leadership want something to pass is a far better way of telling whether it's getting out of committee than the opinions of the people on the committee. If the people on the committee oppose you, you're not getting out of the committee. But if they support you, it doesn't mean you're getting out of committee.
Great. I've been looking to see if I thought we did one on co-sponsoring. I can't find it. Maybe we should do one on co-sponsoring. But I am going to talk a little bit about national politics versus state politics, because I hear so often that I'm too busy working on national policies to work on state policies. State policies aren't important. State policies don't matter. I'm doing the more important work of working on national policies. And as we have stated in previous episodes, probably your best bet to getting national policies passed is actually to get them passed in a state first. And what state better than one where the electorate agrees on the policy? That's a state like Massachusetts. So, this one's an important one because it's a big reason why people just won't put their money or their time in Massachusetts state politics. And it is strategically not a great decision. Jordan, thanks for the reminder. Jordan's jumping in. to say that we want to make sure not to forget our mid-roll here, which is where we really thank all of the people who have been incredibly generous. Some have made really large donations to the podcast. Some are making smaller, $5 a month donations to the podcast. And what that allows us to do is make sure that there's always music incorporated. There's always a graphic incorporated. We're beginning to actually get some advertising up so that we can reach those people who we know are interested in this kind of content, who simply haven't found us yet. We're beginning to sort of reach out to other avenues, be on other podcasts, be on other radio stations and other things. And all of this does cost a little bit of money. There's no progressive organizing without any sort of funds. So if you can, go ahead, look in the description, click on the link. It's super easy. Give $5, give $5 a month. Give us $1,000, if you got it lying around. Why not? $1 a month, do what you can. Thank you so much. And we just want to be clear about who we are designing this podcast for. There are 10,000 people in Massachusetts who have volunteered to progressive electoral organizations. So if you really believe in fighting for social justice, in reducing inequality, in healthcare for all, in affordable housing, in reforming our criminal justice system, and if you want to be part of getting these policies and more passed, this is the podcast for you. We talk about why state politics is so broken, what we could have here in Massachusetts if we fixed it, and how you can get involved. And the most important thing you can do is to forward this podcast to your friends, to your parents, to your coworkers, to anybody, to your fellow activists, people that you are working with on the organizing that you do. Please forward this podcast to them. We are hoping to get this into the ears of many more people so that we can transform Massachusetts in order to transform our nation.
I'll just say quickly too that we're the three of us we don't take a dime from the donations, but it goes to helping artists, the people who are designing the visuals for this, the people who are editing it. So this is going to some great folks who are committed to making this state a little bit better, and they're doing their part by using their skill sets that we don't have to make the podcast a little bit more enjoyable. And so please do consider donating and giving to this. It's such a good cause, and it's going to such great people on the back end that you don't necessarily see, but do some really incredible work.
Absolutely. So myth number 7, Jordan.
Yeah, myth number 7. This is one of my favorites, Taxachusetts. Oh boy, do conservatives love to say Massachusetts we just tax millionaires, we're Taxachusetts. Even despite or even after, I guess I'll say, moving from taxing. So for those of you who don't know, Massachusetts actually cut taxes for people, mostly rich people, cut taxes since 1977. Only 2 states cut taxes more than Massachusetts. Only 2 states. We have gutted taxation on rich people. And what that means is that the MBTA is crumbling. We have, as we stated the other day about why things are failing, our public education for our higher ed, we've cut it more than almost 3 other states, right? There's a clear corollary between the fact that we have cut taxes for rich people and and all of these things are falling apart. But even after, or especially with the taxation on millionaires, we're still below the average. People don't know that. We're below the average. Massachusetts' average tax rate is 9.7%, even with sales tax, everything else. The national average is 9.8%. We are below the national average. We're basically in the middle for taxation in a state with all of the wealth. But I think the thing that's most important to note is that we're still unbalanced. So poorer folks who are at the margins, low-income folks, lower middle-income folks, and middle-income folks, we are the lion's share of the taxation in the state. Even with the millionaires tax, rich people are paying less of their fair share. We have a regressive taxation system. So the majority per income, right, the amount of money you have accessible to you to give to the state, we're asking poor people, middle-class people to pay a lot, and we're asking rich people to do not that much. And if you think about it, there's all sorts of different ways that these things are hidden. You pay an excise fee on your car. You pay a tax on your car. You pay, it's a flat fee to get a driver's license, to get your inspection sticker. All of these things are property taxes. These are all regressive taxes. Sales tax is a regressive tax. These are all ways that the state is taking a little bit of money to do the things we all know and care a lot about, but we're taking that money in a way that's burdening people who have the least to have. And not every state does this. We could burden people who would never notice the difference, who would never notice a little bit of extra money. And so right now there's a push to, again, lower tax. Whenever we raise taxes on rich people, immediately those people get in the ears of the people they own, our elected officials, the people they donate to say, well, we need a tax cut. So they're talking about a passive, the passive income, money that does nothing, that they didn't earn, that they didn't work for. They want to lower the tax rate on that. They want to make it so that dead people can give people who are still alive their stuff for even less money than they or no taxation at all. This is a bonkers thing to do. We need the money. Rich people have gotten more tax cuts than 46 other states. They've gotten their money. We need things in the states, but we are not Taxachusetts. It is a myth. Do not believe it. It is old. It is old talking point, which wasn't even that true at the time. And we need to bury this once and for all.
Yeah. People believe it because it rhymes. So sad. Oh, so Jonathan, amendments, and I'm going to give a little brief explanation for people who didn't hear last season 4's episode 9 on amendments, that a lot of times if a bill doesn't ever make it out of committee, the way that the person sponsoring that bill, who wrote the bill, the state legislator who wrote the bill, can get it to get voted on is to put it into an amendment on the budget. That's like their last stand. They're gonna put it in. And so a lot of people believe if someone puts it as an amendment, they amend it at the end of the session, that they want it to be voted on.
Yeah, I'd say and to formally build in stuff, so it's a myth number 8, that legislators actually are fighting for the amendments that they file and think that those amendments will get a vote. As just one of many examples, I was looking up past notes that in the healthcare reform bill that the House had passed back in 2018, that of the 174 amendments that legislators filed, 144, or about 83% of them, were withdrawn without debate, discussion, vote, anything at all. That so many of the amendments that legislators will file will be withdrawn. They will not speak on those amendments. That amendment will not see it any further than the website of the legislature, and they aren't actually trying to get that in. Maybe when they file that amendment at first, they think that they might have a chance if they do some behind the scenes jockeying, but for the most part, the vast majority of the bill is decided already before that happens. And very few of the amendments are meaningful efforts to pass them as a last-ditch effort. Sometimes if you have somebody and you want to get people on record for something and you have a commitment from a legislator that they also want to get their colleagues on record on something as a last attempt, you might actually see a vote. It might not pass, but you might see a vote. But for the vast majority of amendments, legislators do not seriously think that they will pass, and they aren't going to pass. And so it's something that if you're going to try to file an amendment to whether it's to the budget or to a bill, you really need to get an understanding with a legislator ahead of time of what they're actually planning to do to make that a reality, or if they're just planning to pull it at the slightest pressure.
Yeah. And when you say pull it, we're clear for people who maybe didn't listen to that amendments thing.
Oh yeah. Pulling that means that you kind of file the amendment at the beginning and you can just simply withdraw it. It disappears, that you're not trying to act, you're not seeking a vote on it, you're not trying to get it added in a meaningful way. You've kind of wiped your hands of it maybe the topic will live to fight another day, but you aren't actively seeking to pass it through that vehicle anymore. And that is the vast majority of amendments.
Right. Just kidding. Didn't actually want to do that amendment, but it's on my resume now.
Yeah, it's such a weird process where they say that they did something, right? But in
Yeah.
practice, what happened is they asked people to support a thing, but it never got voted on. It never got put into formal thing. It's not recorded in any way.
Yeah.
If you don't file it and you pull it before it comes in, it's not actually anything. So people are literally celebrating nothing happening where you did nothing.
And I would say even you can get a majority of legislators to co-sponsor your amendment, and that does not mean anything if leadership has not blessed the amendment happening. So again, that dovetails well with the co-sponsorship before that, because it's even true with bills. You can have a majority of people co-sponsoring a bill, and that doesn't mean that when if it's only one person actually deciding, that doesn't mean it's inherently moving forward.
That's right. All right. Myth number 9, lobbying works. This is something that, I think especially in the last like 4, 5, 6 years, people just believe that all you got to do is get enough people to lobby their whoever it is, congressperson or, state rep or whatever, you just lobby them, right? And by lobbying, I want to be clear. Lobbying means meeting with them at a meeting that they agreed to at a time that works for them. Usually it's in private with a few constituents, not with tons of people, like in a polite way where you don't say anything that's going to make them mad. You're hoping and trying that they will, because you're being so nice, that they will come onto your side. And there's, so many organizations that is the primary tactic. Sorry. Like maybe there's a strategy behind it, but in my experience, if the billionaire class does not want, if the powers that be don't already want what this thing is, because obviously, if we're talking about the Tea Party movement who, wanted something that the billionaire class already wanted, then maybe lobbying is going to work. But for things that they don't want, which is most of the things that we are trying to lobby for, if your entire strategy is lobbying, it is not going to succeed.
Yep.
It's got to be combined with something with teeth, because they literally, why should they change? Why should they change their mind? There's other teeth that they have to be afraid of. The other side has sticks. They got real sticks. And if you got no sticks, then, just friendlily meeting with them for coffee and asking them to do what you want is not gonna do anything.
As proof by how little they do.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One of my personal ones that I care a lot about is voting rights. And one of the things that's shameful about Massachusetts is that it's as hard to vote here as it is in some of the states that Massachusetts people look down on. Mm-hmm. One of the jokes I regularly make when I talk to people about this is that we don't even have the things that we are mad that they took away from Texas. There isn't a place that I'm aware of that does all-night voting, 24 hours voting, right? That got taken away. We don't have that. It's only recently that we had Sunday voting. It's actually pretty difficult. Oregon, other states, they send you a ballot in the mail. We have a convoluted process where if you're lucky, depending on what town of the 351 answers to how this process gets implemented, right? Some towns will send you something in the mail that says, like, do you want an absentee ballot? Some of them don't. Some of them do in a timely manner. Some of them don't. Some of them look, it's just a mess. There's 351 systems of voting in Massachusetts, which makes no sense. And we don't send people a ballot. We send you a form to fill out for an absentee ballot. It's needlessly difficult. It's needlessly hard. Our registration date, when you register to go vote, it's not dissimilar from some of the states, again, we look down on.
Yeah.
It's too early on. You decide, you're starting to pay attention and you start to want to go vote, but it's too late. You can't now vote in this election, or you're getting priced out and moved around. We had a state rep who got in trouble because she got priced out of where she lived and had to move and voted because that happens in our state where people can't afford, we're constantly having to move around. Do you vote where you used to live 3 weeks ago, or do you vote where you live now? We don't have same day registration, so you can't do that. The result is that we have the lowest turnout of Black voters in the country. We have some of the worst we have some of the worst sort of racially segregated election turnouts in the country. And so we are just behind in a lot of ways on what other on what we could in terms of voting we could be doing. And it's just too hard to vote here. We should be ashamed of how little we have caught up to some of the ways in which we've made it easy to vote in other states, right? We should think about the fact that we could only dream of having taken away what Texas had and has had taken away.
And I have to jump in and talk a little bit about democracy, because I know how many people are really, really concerned about our democracy, and we should be. But those people think that Massachusetts is fine. And, honestly, Massachusetts is among the worst in terms of having an actual functioning democracy at the state level in many ways. Oh my God, that should have been maybe this will be the, number 12, and we'll make the next one number 13, like that we have a democracy in Massachusetts, and that we shouldn't be worried about when we're worried about democracy, we have to worry about these other states. I hate to say it, but guess what? Democracy is not only a problem in Republican states. You don't have to stop worrying because we elect Democrats. We should be worried about our democracy here with incredibly low turnout. If you look at the turnouts between different districts, you look at the turnout in a wealthy district and the turnout in a low district. We had people running, and I talked to one person. They were like, yeah, our win number is like 300. And I was like, that is not possible. I was like, if your win number is 300, you're going to lose. But guess what? It really was. Because so few people, don't take 300. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but it was wildly low. I think maybe it was actually 1,000, whereas in my district, it's like 5,000. And, it was that low because people don't vote in their district because it's a poor district. Yeah. And that is the reality in Massachusetts. So I just really want to talk to those people who are worried about democracy. You should be worried. That's number 12 now, is that we have a great democracy and you shouldn't worry about democracy here. Yeah.
I'll just say really quickly, sorry. We have a school committee in our largest district that isn't elected. Many, and has continued to be fought, like they still can't fight to have it. Just like, people look down on what happened to Detroit, and like the Republicans there took over and basically poisoned Black and brown people. Well, guess what? We're doing that with education. Southbridge, all of these Black and brown communities are being poisoned by I guess, well-meaning white folks in Boston in a building, and their outcomes are not better, but they've lost democratic control. They've lost democratic oversight. And the school, and it's not just that they've lost democratic oversight and, oh, that's sad. What's happened is that the Black and brown children who are left behind in these districts, in Holyoke, in Southbridge and some of these other places, is that the quality of the education has become poor as the only focus becomes the MCAS. You lose art, you lose quality social studies, you lose really good democratic oversight or governing or anything else. And instead you focus on the things that aren't actually helpful, that aren't actually things that we need, which is like math, a ton of math, right? So that they can pass the MCAS. So you hollow out all of the things we know are really helpful for kids, and you increase the things that are actually making our kids like education less, want to engage less, make schools miserable for these kids. That's happening here. That's a democratic loss of oversight.
Yes, and often those like the actual people living there who should be democratically making these decisions, as you call them, well-intentioned white people who are taking over, they often have corporate ties to the MCAS, for example. So they are not like well-meaning, like this is, they're not without their own motivations.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
One thing I want to quickly point and then seg to another topic. When your point talking about like low turnout in state rep districts, I had just looked at one district near me. And what's wild is my old state rep district, the person who won with 905 votes
Yeah.
in a primary, and then like
Wow.
they have that seat. Like it's not 905 out of approximately like roughly like 40,000 people who would have lived in the district, and whatever percentage of them are then registered that with 905, you get that seat. Like, and that's just very damning about what we as a state aren't doing to engage people.
Yep.
Okay, this is our last of, well, it's going to be 12, but it's a baker's dozen now because we threw democracy in there. Number 13.
Okay, I'm enjoying. Okay,
Who is doing this one, by the way?
No, we have two more.
We do.
two
I'm so
more.
sorry. Oh, you're totally right. That was number 11. And now new number 12, Jonathan.
The new number 12 is that you actually have to have full democracy in your own city here in Massachusetts. So this is dovetailing of something that Jordan just said, that whenever I hear people complain about what a terrible thing in another state when they're trying to block their liberal capital city or some other big liberal metropolis in the city from passing its own laws, I end up thinking, well, Massachusetts beat them by 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
Since we in our state just assume it's a matter of course that municipalities shouldn't be able to pass a quite wide range of policy when it comes to housing policy, that municipalities are constrained from doing when it comes to, let's say, tenant protections that you can't do because that is deemed to be governing the civil relationship between a landlord and a tenant, and a municipality is not allowed to do that without express permission from the state. When it comes to the fact that municipalities have very little in the way of taxing power, and beyond property taxes, typically can't do anything unless it's framed as a fee as opposed to a tax without state approval. It's not necessarily a big thing on it, let's say, from like progressive purposes, although it can dovetail into like equity issues. It's just wild to me that about liquor licenses in the state, that you have to constantly go through the state to get a liquor license, which actually has problems. Like I know, like in Boston, has problems because it's typically moneyed white establishments that have all of them, which kind of continue a phenomenon of underinvestment in black and brown neighborhoods. But in all of this, it means that there are artificial constraints imposed by the legislature on what you can do on a local level, and many legislators like keeping it that way because it gives them something to accomplish. Because as we've talked before, since there isn't a lot compared to what could happen in terms of actual legislating in Massachusetts, creating that kind of bottleneck of home rule petitions, what it's called when a municipality asks the state for permission for something, gives a legislator the ability to say, look what I got you, town. And also as a way of asserting their power vis-a-vis local electeds.
Yeah.
But that means that everybody in the town loses out because of it.
And I'm going to jump in and say that if you want to listen to season 4, episode 24, it's a great one, home rule petitions. Massachusetts protects the powerful from democracy. So that's for more information on that one. And I think we're now up to
now we're at the bakers. Yeah, the 13th. So
dozen.
we'll end with this one, which is just the thing that drives me the most crazy, which is we lead in donating to leftist things around the country. Massachusetts is a donor state. There's a reason that you could sort of trip over national elected Democrats here because they are coming here to raise money. We donate a ton of money to other states. And it's not that we shouldn't do that. We should do that. We should care about other states. But as Anna said earlier, we need to pass things here. And we have a skeletal progressive movement in Massachusetts. Our ability to move things here, the reason things are moving backwards quickly, the reason that we can't pass big things here is because our larger progressive community is anemic. All the money leaves and almost nothing stays here. And so this is my pitch to remind you to donate locally, to donate here, to donate to organizations and not just politicians, organizations who are on the ground doing this work, trying to make the state what it could and should be. So please do. Don't let money just leave. Yes, care about other states. Yes, donate to other states, but money also has to stay here. We can't just be against things We have to be for things, and we have to be for things in places where we can pass those things.
Yeah. Well said. Absolutely fantastic. So there's your baker's dozen of myths. We hope that if you know anybody that you're organizing with who maybe believes 1 or 2 or 3 or 12 of these myths, you might forward this podcast to them. We love being in touch with you all. Please send us, reach out to us, send us your questions. We're probably going to do a live podcast sometime soon where we actually take questions live. So let us know what you want us to talk about, and we look forward to talking to everybody next week. Hey there. Thanks so much for watching us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And it would be amazing if you would also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. Just look for Incorruptible Massachusetts wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.